everyone, it's Abby. I'm starting a new costume series that I talked about in my 2020 wrap-up video earlier this year. I've been super excited about this project. It's an Italian Renaissance 1490s dress from Ever After, the 1998 movie with Drew Barrymore. I've always really loved the costuming in that movie since I saw it as a child. All the dresses are just so amazing and the characters are so fun. I would love any one of the dresses in the movie. But I decided on her court dress, the green, cream, and yellow dress that she wears to save her servant near the beginning of the movie. Now, for the costume, they definitely made it all one dress, which makes things easier in general to wear and put on. I decided I wanted to go more historically accurate, seeing as how I've been working on a lot of historical costumes recently, and that I would love to wear Italian Renaissance again, using some of the pieces of this dress that I create. I'm going to start from the bottom up. I always feel like this is the best way for me because you can wear the undergarments with the outer pieces as you go. Sometimes it's more fun to start with the pretty outer layers first to keep motivation. But I have motivation in spades, so I'll start with the inner layers. Italian Renaissance dresses start with the Camicia or Chemise. The Ever After dress I chose has what looks like a cream silk organza sticking out where the chemise would be, I think. I've decided to go with a thin linen instead from Dharma Trading Company. I want to be able to use this for more than this outfit in the future. So I'll be making a linen Camicia today. The next layer is usually some kind of corset, stays, or pair of bodies. Gotta wonder why they're called pair of bodies. Is it because they go on the body? Probably. My research has indicated from this time period there really isn't very much information about this part in history. Not much has survived. Most costumers use their Regency stays or something from a later time period. Others make pair of bodies, similar to what Drew Barrymore used in some parts of the movie. Still others prefer to add support to the underdress bodice and use that as the support garment. I'm choosing to finish my Regency short stays and use that for now. I may make a different choice in the future. The next layer is the Gamora or underdress. I'll be using a couple of cream silks that I have. I'll be attaching the green velvet sleeves to the underdress. And the final layer will be a Gaiornia or overdress. I don't know how to say that. Gaiornia? Gaiornia? It's all very Italian. A sleeveless dress that I have a synthetic green and yellow brocade that looks kind of similar to what's in the movie. Finally, I'll be making a snood out of ribbon for the hair. So, with all that, I will begin with the linen Camicia. So let's get started. I've been mostly following an Italian Renaissance gown construction blog that I found for pattern making, along with a picture I found on Pinterest. I will link the blog in the description. The Camicia pattern I found on Pinterest, see here, is mostly a bunch of rectangles. I've used their measurements as a basis and added to it where I needed extra length. Here I'm truing up the edge of the linen by pulling a thread to get a straight line. This is usually the best way to be sure you're cutting straight along the grain, but it can be time consuming because the thread likes to break. I've used the width of the fabric, 54 inches, for the front and back pieces. The pattern calls for 45 inches in length, so I went with that. I used the front piece to measure out the back as well, 2 rectangles. I cut the triangle gores with the measurements from the pattern. I cut 4 of them. I cut the sleeves off camera, but I used 45 inches width, and I went with 38 inches length. I always add a few inches to sleeve measurements because my arms are longer than normal pattern lengths. The pattern calls for 8 inches by 8 inches for the underarm gussets. Then I cut the squares into triangles. So now I have a bunch of triangles and rectangles to put together, and no instructions. What follows ends up requiring a lot of seam ripping as I keep getting things wrong, but it works out in the end. I pin up the sides of the body of the chemise. It's still a rectangle. I will be cutting the neckline in a bit. I pin the gussets into the sleeves at the top on both sides. I pin the gores along the sides. I'm going along the straight grain, so the bias will be along the straight grain of the body. I realize I need to unpin the sides of the body to add the sleeves in. I made my first mistake here and just pinned the triangle gussets to the body. I should have gone further down to give my arms more room. The pattern even indicates that. I'll seam rip and fix that later on when I realize. I machine sew up the gores along the sides. I'm using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I machine sew the gussets in. You can see my ironing scar is still healing here. Seriously, watch out where your iron is when it's on. It hurts. I then had to unpin the sides of the body on the bottom and pin in the gores. At least I hadn't sewn up the seams yet. I lined them up with the bottom of the hem and pinned both sides. I pinned the rest of the way up into the gussets and then the sleeves. It will be one long line, a little easier than some gussets can be. I machine sew all those seams I just pinned. I decided to do hand-felled seams for the whole Camicia. I really wanted a hand sewing project to zone out on. I'm using a single white cotton thread for this. I cut one side to 1/4 inch, fold the other side over to enclose the raw edges, pin down, and start whip stitching the seams down. I now need to cut a bunch of ruffles and strips for neck and cuff binding. I'm doing it all on the straight grain. This one is 2 inches. This part is not in the pattern. I'm choosing to create separate ruffles and gather everything down instead of adding a gathering cord, which incidentally I could have saved a whole bunch of seam ripping if I had just used a gathering cord for the neck. But what can you do? I'm cutting neck binding here. It's 1 inch, I think, which will make the binding 1/2 inch. I'll be doing 1/4 inch seam allowances for all of these. I measured my wrist, added 2 inches for overlap, and cut 4 pieces at 9 inches in length, and I think 3 inches width for the cuffs. I hand rolled the edges of all the ruffle strips. It used up a 1/4 inch of the edge. I seam ripped a couple inches at the end of the sleeve so I have room to get my hand in. I lengthened my stitch and machine sewed a gathering thread into all the ruffles. This is the cuff ruffles to start. I'm separating it into 4 sections with the pins so I can match the gathers to the cuff piece. I tried to match the length of each ruffle to the length of the ungathered edges of the neck and the sleeves. I gather and pin the ruffle to one side of the cuff piece. I machine sew the ruffle in place. As you can see, the cuff is looking good so far. I hand whip stitched a rolled hem into the sides of each cuff ruffle. I realized that a double gathering thread is better, and used that for the other cuff gather. I know these things, but somehow I still make the mistake because I want to save time. Silly me! I pin the edge of the ruffle in a little bit. I then pin the lining of the cuff piece in place. I'll be sewing along 3 edges. I machine sewed the cuff seams. I cut the corners before turning it right side out. I machine gather some neck ruffles. I think I'm making these a little smaller than the cuff ruffles. Kerfuffles. I add a couple machine gathering threads to the edge of the sleeves to prepare to attach the cuffs. I pin the lining of the cuff out of the way to start, then I match up the middles. I gather the sleeve down and pin it to the cuff piece. I machine sew those ruffles down. I fold a 1/2 inch under on the cuff lining and pin it to hide the raw edges. I hand whip stitch the cuff lining in place. I started with making 54 inches of neck binding. I think I have about 200 inches of ruffle that I'm gathering into it. As you can see, I learned and added 2 gathering threads. I gathered and pinned to the binding piece. I machine sewed that in place. I'm finally going to cut the curves into the front and back necklines. I fold it in half to get the same cut on both sides. I measure 2 inches down in the back with pencil and I smooth the curve into the sides. I measure 8 inches down with a pencil on the front neckline and create a larger curve into the arm. I pretty much just eyeball it. I try it on at this point. It's really difficult because the gathers aren't there yet, but it seems right, I think. I add the neckline binding lining to the gathers and pin it in place. I machine sew that seam up. I add machine gathers to the neckline. I separate it into each of the sleeves, the front neck and the back neck. I chose to add the hem to the bottom at this point. I fold a 1-inch hem, 1/2 inch folded under, and I hand whip stitch it in place. Here's where I started to make some giant mistakes. I measured my neckline and thought that it would be 48 inches, so I tried doing math and separated 48 inches into the 4 quadrants. 10.5 inches for each sleeve, 12.5 inches for the back, and 14.5 inches for the front. I gathered the neckline, pinned, and started hand sewing all of it in place using a hand backstitch. I then fold the lining a 1/4 inch under and pin it in place. I hand finish the ends of the binding after cutting the ends off. I hand whip stitch the lining in place. I was so happy. It was finally time to try it on. Then I tried it on and realized my mistake. It was too small in the neck. All right, so yeah, as you can see, It is much too small in the neckline. Too small. So I did not measure correctly. So now I'm going to measure correctly and seam rip a ton of hand stitching. Yeah. Time to seam rip the neckline. Time number 1. The whole thing got ripped off this time. This time I did a measure of my neckline. I came up with 60 inches this time. Seems different enough, so I went with it. Mistake. I added the ruffles that I cut off the back in, plus a bit more, to get to 60 inches. This time I think I went with 13 inches for the sleeves, 18 inches for the front neckline, and 16 inches for the back neckline. I took a break from neckline hell and created buttons and buttonholes for the cuffs. This was my first attempt. This go around I gathered a circle of linen and stuffed it with more linen to create a soft button. I hand bound the buttonholes. I liked these buttons at first, but they really didn't hold up well, so I ended up creating new ones. I didn't film the process of the new buttons, but I found some plastic buttons that fit the holes, and I gathered a linen circle to enclose the button. I anchored the gathers, and I wrapped thread around the 4 edges of the button, going through the center holes. Then I anchored the whole button to the cuffs through the center holes. They still look great, but are much easier to button. I tried on the 60-inch neckline, and it seemed mostly right, but this is when I realized that I got the sleeves put in wrong. Seam ripping number 2 involved ripping the gussets out from the body. I moved it down 2 inches in the front and 3 inches in the back, thus shortening the arm gathers, so I ripped most everything again to get it all to sit right. This gave me more underarm room, as I should have had that all along. I realized what I did wrong. So after I finished this last time, I put it on and realized it was kind of tight under the arms, so I decided to go and seam rip almost the entire neckline again. 3rd time. So right now, I think I finally got it. So now it fits better under the arms. And I think we're good. Now we've got more room under the arms. And you never know, I may go back and have to fix something on it again. But hey, for now, I think this will work. I thought I was good at this point and took some pictures. I tried it with my stays too. When looking at the pictures later, I realized I needed to seam rip one more time. The back was just too low. This was the 3rd neckline seam rip, so that means the 4th time I sewed up the neckline. I only had to rip out the back this time. The final measurements are arms 12 inches each, front 17.5 inches, back 9.5 inches. That makes the neckline 51 inches total. And I'm finally happy with it, so that's a completed Camicia. Also, bonus, I found these great leather shoes on Poshmark. They'll be perfect for my Danielle costume. Thank you for joining me as I worked through a pattern that had no instructions. It all worked out in the end, and I have a linen Camicia that will work for my ever after dress and future Italian Renaissance dresses. If you like this video and you want to see more sewing and costume videos, remember to subscribe to my channel. If you have any questions or comments, let me know in the comments below. Happy sewing! I'm trying to record. Can I? What's up? What's up, sweetie? I'm right here. I'm right here. I love you. I do. What? What's up? Oh gosh.